Γεια σας φίλοι μου. Θα κάνω ένα βίντεο σήμερα για το ντοκιμαντέρ Going Back to the Greek. So, this documentary is about Pastor Steven Anderson and Pastor Dane Johansen going to Cyprus. And in the video or in the documentary, they seem to be wanting to make 3 points. 3 points that I've gathered. And we're going to go through these 3 points, and I'm going to give you my thoughts and tell you if I agree or disagree.
Αμαρτίας θάνατος και δε χάρισμα του Θεού ζωή αιώνιος.
So the first point made by both Stephen and Dane is that the Greek language should be viewed holistically. I'm going to completely agree with this first point. It is true, as they mentioned, the great scholars of the past took this approach. They learned everything from the modern language spoken in their present day, all the way back to Homer and everything in between. And I believe, at minimum, a student should at least be exposed to Homer as well as the modern Greek, even taking the old classic grammar translation approach. They need to at least have some exposure to get a better grasp on not just the language of the New Testament, but its position when viewed diachronically with the language as a whole.
You understand everything I'm saying so far? Τα γαρ οψώνια της αμαρτίας θάνατος, το δε χάρισμα του Θεού ζωή αιώνιος εν Χριστώ Ιησού το Κυρίο ημών. So, χάρισμα. Τι σημαίνει ένα χάρισμα?
It's like a gift.
Yeah, it's a gift, right?
So the second point that I gathered that they were trying to make is that the modern pronunciation should be used when teaching. And of course, they're referring to teaching New Testament Greek in seminaries and so forth. And they give 3 pieces of, evidence or 3 reasons that this should be done. Number 1, it provides a conduit for connecting the Koine dialect of the New Testament with the living Demotic dialect, or Demotiki. Number 2 being, at the same time, it paves a road for evangelism to native Greek speakers. And the third point being that the learning materials and programs and things like phone apps for learning to speak modern Greek are much more extensive and not to mention much more entertaining than what we currently have for so-called biblical Greek. So this second point, I'm going to agree and disagree with. I do think that this approach is legitimate, and I think this approach is one of 2 legitimate approaches. So you could say that I do agree with it somewhat. The other approach, of course, is the living Koine approach, or the living Kuni approach, or the living Kini approach, or the Kune approach, depending on which variation of the restored pronunciation or modern pronunciation you want to go with. So this approach uses a restored imperial Koine pronunciation that is very close to the modern pronunciation. It also teaches the 1st century Greek language using conversational methods and comprehensible input. This approach is actually still in its infancy. There are many resources that have been created, and there are other major works coming down the pipe that we are eagerly awaiting. The big names and major contributors, of course, being Jordache Kifiak, Randall Booth, Benjamin Cantor, Michael Halcomb, Sebastian Carnazzo, Paul Nitz, and many others. Now, Chris Rico and Gerardo Ramirez also teach ancient Greek with the conversational method, but they're using an Erasmian pronunciation. Now, all of these scholars that I just mentioned are very proficient in speaking ancient Greek, with Jordache probably being the most proficient and fluent. I would say that it is possible that as more and more materials are produced and more young scholars like Ben Cantor continue to mentor other young scholars, that we may have enough people in 50 to 100 years that are fluent in the Koine dialect to teach at most of the major seminaries. But until then, unless you have like a Jordache or a Randall Booth on staff, hiring a native Greek speaker to teach the modern language to seminary students may actually be the best approach. And so overall, I'm going to have to agree with the second point made in the documentary as well.
Καταλαβαίνεις?
Ναι, καταλαβαίνω. Ναι.
Καταλαβαίνεις πάντα.
Ναι, είναι διαφορετική από την νέα ελληνική γλώσσα, αλλά είναι πολύ παρόμοια. Άρα κάποιος που μπορεί να διαβάζει νέα ελληνικά μπορεί να διαβάζει και την γλώσσα της Καινής Διαθήκης. Absolutely.
The third point made in the documentary is that many self-proclaimed Greek experts and Greek professors at seminaries do not actually know the language. As was stated in a popular article by Dan Street, the vast majority of New Testament Greek professors do not possess the ability to say basic phrases such as hello, how are you, goodbye, and basic words like yes, cat, hat, monkey, ball, cold, chair, nose. And so when you think about it, it's odd that someone would claim to be able to notice stylistic differences in the pericope of the adulteress and the rest of John's gospel, but not be able to say the phrase, I have cats, or I jump. These are usually the scholars that harp on exegesis and syntax.
That New Testament exegesis is not dependent upon your pronunciation, and it's primarily dependent upon your knowledge of grammar and syntax.
As Dr. Randall Booth once stated in the B Greek Forum, I define exegesis as learning to extract meaning from a language that one does not control.
Su Christou, huiou tu theou, hos gegraptai, entis prophetais, edu, ego apostello ton angelon mu, pra prasopusu. Has katakiwase, tain hadansu, empras thensu.
No,
Do you understand any of that?
No, not a word. If I was not reading this,
So if you didn't look at it, you would have no idea.
I would have no idea.
But how you pronounce it is irrelevant to that. Absolutely 1,000% irrelevant. It makes no difference.
So needless to say, I'm going to agree strongly with the third point that they made as well. So 3 out of 3, not bad. If you have not yet seen the documentary, go watch it. I strongly recommend it. It's very well put together. It's very interesting and engaging. I really enjoyed it. I've watched it several times now. And regardless of what you may think of the infamous Pastor Steven Anderson, be fair with him, at least on this subject. He's a very gifted linguist. He's very talented, very knowledgeable. So even if you don't agree on his political stances and things like that, try to keep this issue separate when giving a judgment of the documentary. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I appreciate these guys putting it together.
Tani μετά σου μετά τον άλλον εν το δίκτυο, εν το διαδίκτυο, ναι.
Ναι,
ως κίνημα προς στόμα διακινήματος. Καλώς φώτρα, καλώς φώτρα. Γινώσκω ότι πολλοί εκ των ακούοντων εμών θέλουσιν τούτο και καλόν έστε.
I'm not getting any of this.